Okay, alright, alright. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Extra Credits Book Club podcast. Uh, we... Look. First of all, I'm Decker. This is Night Mother. And look. Book we're reading, we don't like it. We're having a very bad time. But it's not as criminally egregious as, say, Colleen Hoover book. But we're gonna finish it.
Yeah. I feel like if I spitefully finished the Colleen Hoover book, I should at the very least apathetically finish this one.
It's only fair.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that it's a bad book, it's just really boring. It didn't really need to happen.
I honestly struggle how to define it because I'm just so disappointed by how everything has gone. Like, I feel kind of worn down, but I know that's also a combination of the fact that like I have read some abysmal books this year. And so it's like a compounding effect on me where I'm like running to my Kindle full of fan fiction at the end of the day just to feel
Boy,
something.
that's no good. But this round week, it's not really a week. We do every 2 weeks. So this fortnight,
Yeah.
we did chapters 33 through 48.
Yeah.
And if you can believe it, things actually happen.
A couple of things. And it took about 400 pages to get there, but we got there.
Truly
but at what cost?
despicable. As seems to be the trend with this book, or at least the luck of the draw, where every time we start a new batch of chapters, it starts with fucking Andon.
And his chapters are periodically the longest chapters in
Yeah,
the book.
consistently. And the least interesting and the least, like, none of them ever really drive the plot forward except for maybe this one.
Yeah, and
if you can call it that.
the plot kind of happens to Andon. Like he's not doing anything to help move the plot along, but he's just kind of there when some stuff happens. And
right. Like, even the plot that occurs because he facilitated it, he's not there for it.
No.
Which is for the better. Anyway, chapter 33. I think it's really hard for me to remember what happened, but I think he's getting scolded by his, like, host family because I don't remember.
He's basically like he's been there a year. The first thing I noticed from this chapter was like it took Andon an entire calendar year to learn how to like take the bus in the city that he lives in. And that's like a big milestone achievement for him. He's also doing a lot of his normal like forgetting things about the fact that he's not in Janloon anymore. He forgets that like Jade being worn by civilians has been outlawed, despite spending all of his time with Greenbones and Port Massey and like hanging out at the Grudge Hall a bunch. And that's basically what his host parents are upset about him with because they don't like him spending so much time at the Grudge Hall because of the
Right.
time that the cops showed up and there's people wearing Jade there. You're not allowed to wear Jade. But he's not really spending a ton of time there to be with his community so much as he's spending time there so that Corey will drive him home after and they'll get naked and stuff.
Yeah. This whole other than his host family being like, don't go to the Grudge Hall anymore, and he's like, okay, I will. Um, it's just Andon being a lustful degenerate.
Well, he's like having sex for the first time in his life. He's like in a situation where someone is like attracted to him openly, kind of openly for the first time who he's super into. So I can get it, but it's also like it's
Well, I really
he-
liked that Andon is like this Corey guy is like, my gosh, he's so hot, and like we do all kinds of weird, crazy stuff. Is this love? And I'm like, no.
he's like I would probably follow him anywhere.
And I made a note. I was like, leave it to Andon to get attached to some dude who just wants to have sex with somebody.
Do you think that's all he wants from him?
That's the vibe I get.
Yeah.
Also, look here, dear listener. This Corey character, this guy that Andon's seeing, the similarities between him and his like surrogate dad, Hilo, are striking. They are.
What makes you say that?
They're like the same person.
You think so?
Just like a cool, confident hothead kind of, who is really tough. He knows what I'm gonna be the Horn someday.
That's true. I feel like Corey is like has less like of a sense of purpose that Hilo has. But I
Yeah.
think like in terms of being very effortlessly charismatic, totally.
And Andon makes Corey his whole personality,
Yeah.
as children are wont to do. Even though he's not a child, he sure acts like one.
Well, he's like 20 and this is like the first I as someone who like definitely has gone through like this phase because I
Yeah.
think a lot of us have
Yeah.
it's just I hate reading about it cuz it's cringe and reminds me of what it was like to be 20 and I'm like
Yeah.
I could just do without, please.
How dare you remind me of my memories? But the whole chapter is just Andon thinking about Corey all the time, and then being upset that being able to think about him is interrupted by some of the other gangs in the city doing a drive-by on the Grudge Hall.
Yeah, basically. Like he's like having a little chat with some of his friends and Corey's getting ready to leave to go to law school.
Yeah.
And so they're all like writing in this little notebook for him to take with him. And Andon writes, "Thank you for your friendship this year. You made me feel at home in Port Massey. Good luck in law school." And it's just like
Right
so
up
devastating.
high school yearbook bullshit.
Yeah. And then a bunch of them start talking about joining the military. And Andon is like, what the fuck? Why would you do that? Like, why would you? And a lot of them are like, well, it's the only legal way for us to be able to wear Jade. And Andon's mind is like, this is astonishingly un-Kekanese. Like, of
Yeah.
course it's Andon. You've been here for a year.
'Cause
You know this is not KCON.
He's like, how could you even think about fighting for someone who isn't the clan? The clan's everything. I'm like, that's rich coming from you, you little shithead.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I think the drive-by essentially, I forget the guy's name, but it's like an older guy who wears his Jade in like leather gloves.
Is it pronounced like Roan or Ron? Like it's Rohn in the book, and I have
Yeah,
no
I think it's
idea.
Roan.
Roan.
He's like an older guy in his 50s or so, but essentially he takes control of the whole situation. And he's like, Andon, I need you to do me a favor, you white-coated boy. Go talk to the cops. Distract him a little bit.
Yeah, Andon thinks he's like being put to some purpose because of his like wherewithal and like former fighting background, and then he realizes it's only because he looks Hispanian and isn't wearing Jade.
Mm-hmm.
He like runs up and Corey's like, "Holy shit, what are you doing? Like you're not a green bone. Like go back down with the other civilians."
Yeah,
And
and he
Andon
has
gets
like a
like really embarrassed about
yeah,
it.
he has a crisis of existential crisis about it.
Yeah, he's like, "I'm supposed to be the one protecting." It's like you made your choice, Andon.
You really
Like
got to
I
stop
guess
bringing this
because
up, man.
yeah, like this is the first time where a conflict like this has happened since he's been in Espenia. And I guess he just never thought that like he would ever run into a situation again in his life where he kind of missed wearing Jade. And like he hates that Corey had to be the one to like protect him and like shield him with his body.
Yeah, and of course Andon loves to pretend that it's not entirely his fault he was exiled.
I know.
It's despicable. That because he's just like, I was exiled. It's like, yeah, dog, it was your fault.
Yeah, he keeps thinking that like it's all like how dare Shay and Hilo send him here, but what would he have done in Janloon besides like just kind of be a ghost of the person he's supposed to be?
Right. Also, this is the new chapter. Because chapter 33 ends with the drive-by starting, and then the next chapter is like the drive-by occurring in the aftermath.
Oh, I thought it all finished. Like the
Oh,
cops conversation happens in 33, and then
oh,
he and Ron like take off down the alley.
nope. It all blends together, though. All the same.
I not that it matters, but I need to know.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, it doesn't really matter, but like okay. But now I'm in the query unsolved mindset. Yeah, chapter 33 ends with after Andon has the conversation with the cops and he leads them off in the wrong direction. Ronan and him have a conversation about the guy that got shot and actually died. And
Right.
then it's like Sano or
It didn't
something.
matter. Met him once.
We met him as he was dying, basically.
Yeah.
But then Andon finds out that Roan keeps his Jade in like a pair of leather gloves that he hides in the wall.
Right.
And then they take off down an alley. And then the beginning of chapter 34 is like 2 months later, basically.
Oh. Right. Well, it all blended together for me.
Yeah. I mean, because is it interesting? No.
But that's why I made the note about him being white coated in 34, because that's when it finally dawns on him. He's like, oh, that's why you said go talk to the cops, because I look white.
Yeah. And this is where he's like being really torn up about needing to be protected now that he's a civilian. And I'm like, God, I hope this ends with Andon finally putting Jade back on. Not that I care about his well-being at this point, but because I would rather see Andon as like a sociopathic, like bloodthirsty killer than whatever he's doing right now. Because this is so sad and boring.
I hope he never gets that shit back. I hope he never puts it on. But Corey leaves. Like he goes off to wherever. Doesn't matter. None of the places that are in this book make sense because the names are so weird that you don't know what they're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And they just kind of say them as if you know.
Yeah.
Which
I didn't even write down the city where he's going to school.
Yeah.
It's far enough away that he can only get in touch with Andon via the telephone.
Right. And Andon has his little Bella staring out the window for 3 months moment.
Yeah, listening to Possibility.
Yeah.
All the seasons go by outside.
And there's this weird side plot in this whole like Port Massey section of the book that's this like racism subplot, but it feels so clumsy and shoehorned in that it's like, why is this here? Why are we doing this?
Like against the Kekanese people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just well, like it can't be for the benefit of Andon to be like, oh wow, people don't look like, because the Kekanese look down on literally everybody else in the world. And then outside of
Yeah,
KCON, everybody's like, ugh, Kekanese, bunch of stuck-up assholes. And it's
yeah.
like the subplot is not for the benefit of Andon to go, wow, people look at us the way we look at them. That sucks. Maybe I'm wrong. It's just him
I know.
being racist upon.
Yeah, it is very strange because it's like unclear what the message is, if anything, or if it's just like,
Yeah.
here these things are happening. People have perspectives. The end.
Yeah. But this chapter ends with, I think ends. Yeah, it ends with the uh the clan, if you can call it that, in Port Massey going, "Hey, Andon, come sit here, please. Well, I need to talk to you. Hey, can you call your family, please?"
Yeah, after like the first time Andon meets them, being like, just so you know, like we can't get in touch with my family because I'm exiled here basically and they're not going to help. And
Yeah.
the like Doc, I think, is that how it's pronounced? The
Dauk.
guy who's like the Douk. Okay. So he's like, no, like don't worry, like you'll have your
Yeah.
use down the
Don't even
line.
sweat it.
But then he immediately is like, so like I just find it so hard to believe that your family would just abandon you here and not
Yeah.
send help if you ask.
And he I believe he even carts out his host family and he's like, "See, you brought that green teapot, bro. You owe me a
Mm-hmm.
favor." So he's
Yeah.
like, "No, gee whiz." So he calls Hilo and no, he calls Shay.
Yeah, because Hilo's still technically not talking to him.
And Shay's like, "Yeah, okay, I'll go." And Hilo is essentially like, "No, I'll go."
Yeah.
And I think that's the end of that chapter.
Mm-hmm.
But chapter 35 is one of the chapters, one of two chapters in this block that I was like, I wish the whole book was like this.
Yeah.
Because it's, I think this is when he meets with Hilo meets with the family.
This one he's dealing with like the Espenian politicians and
Oh, that's right.
talking
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah,
how
yeah,
they like
yeah.
want military support.
Right.
I'm so at the point of this book where it's like I'm just like numb to everything that's happening in it. Like anything good that happens, I'm like, it's too late. Like we're 400 pages in. Game of Thrones didn't even treat me this poorly. Like it would be like 300 pages before some shit would happen in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And but basically so Hilo is in a room. I don't know where they are. But he's with there's one other person besides the leaders of No Peak. There's one other person in the room wearing Jade, who's a general, and he's a senior military advisor to the Royal Council, and the
Right.
only person in the Kekanese government who could be said to be like an exception to the cultural and legal prohibition against Jade in political office. And basically, the whole point of this conversation is that the Espenian like generals and politicians the same ones that Shay was having dinner with a while ago, are like, well, we haven't discussed the potential for KCON to provide military support in Ortoko. And they're like, well, we only have a military force of like 60,000 people. And even for an island of like 12 million people, that's a pretty small force.
Yeah.
And the generals and the Espenians are like, well, think about your civilian Jade wearing forces. But the Kekanese are like, no, that's not how this works. Like, we don't care about international affairs. Like, we're here to serve our clans, and that's it. Like,
Yeah.
asking us for military support is completely out of the question. And then they have like a back and forth on just like the way that they perceive each other's cultures, kind of like in
Yeah.
regards to like military support that they can or cannot give.
There's a weird
And
like back and forth of negotiation for what kind of support they'll give. Like
yeah,
the Espenians want more support. They want more Jade. And the things that they're offering in return, I wrote in my notes, I was like, if they accept any of these, they're fucking idiots.
yeah, because the Espenians are completely like negating all of the things that the Kekanese are doing for them right now, like with
Yeah.
the way that they're making it easier for like commerce to happen in each other's countries. Like they've already done a ton. And like Shay is kind of salty during this whole exchange because Hilo doesn't really let her speak. She doesn't bring it up until later that like she's like, you should have let me talk during
Right.
that, because like what we've already done has been so undermined.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that they're offering is like, well, if you won't send your military, then send your green bones. He was like, no. Like, okay, well,
Yeah.
if you won't send your green bones, then maybe provide us like let us dock here as like a way station. And he's like, no. He's like, well, what about helping Hispanian soldiers that are already here? And he's like, no. And I'm like, these are such phony, flimsy ass like everything they want, they have nothing in return worth what they're asking.
Yeah. They want to colonize KCON.
Yeah. And but he like I was certain because of how negotiations in this series have gone so like before, I was expecting them to fold like a deck of cards. Like, oh sure, we'll do whatever you want for nothing.
Yeah, that's been how they've dealt with things up to now.
Yeah, but Hilo was just like, eat shit, I'm out of here.
Yeah. You love to see it.
Yeah, it is nice to see.
It's about time.
Too little, too late though. I think that's kind of it. Oh, that's right. We're all still worried about the smugglers.
That's right. Yeah.
Apparently, they're still trying to smuggle Jade out, in and out, and they keep getting shipments taken. And Hilo's like, "Why is this taking so long? Why is this such a big deal?" And I think Mate Ken is like, they keep changing the methods of which they're hiding it." And I'm like, "Yeah, they're smugglers, man.
That's kind of like the whole deal.
If you get caught, like if your shipment gets caught and it's like, oh well, we can't use shirt buttons anymore."
Yeah. Right, because they're smuggling out Jade's scrap, basically. Uh-huh. And like the Call family has a bunch of Jade scrap that they've recovered from them and are just kind of keeping somewhere.
Right.
But Ken just got married and he's like super besotted
Right.
with his wife, and like Tar's kind of like ribbing him for it. And that's when Hilo or Shay tells Hilo that she's gonna go visit Andon, and Hilo's like, no, I'm gonna go.
Especially, and Hilo was like, first of all, it's about time I go see Andy.
Mm-hmm.
And second of all, you just got over the scandal about you being like a Espenian spy, so maybe don't go to Espenia, you idiot.
Yeah, it's maybe she's probably like the worst possible person who could go.
Mm-hmm. But that's it for 35.
Yeah.
And in chapter 36, I don't remember how it starts, but my first note is God, Barrow's a moron. And it's probably because he's doing the same thing he always does, which is anytime someone parrots back anything he's said before to himself, he acts like it's the dumbest thing he's ever heard.
Yeah.
Like, why would you ever say that? That's so stupid. It's like, bro, you said that 4 chapters ago.
Yeah. Yeah, he and Moot are just like hanging out in Barrow's apartment and it's super hot and his like fans aren't or the air conditioning isn't working because there was a storm recently and they're just like throwing things into a bucket. I don't
Yeah.
even know. They're
It's a
doing
lot of
some just
bitching and moaning.
yeah, because they've been unemployed for a while because Soradio won't give them any work anymore because they didn't want to do the whispered name thing that um he asked them to do. Like Moot wanted to do it. And Barrow was like, no, fuck that. Like, I'm out.
Yeah. And now he's mad that they're essentially shut out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we're not getting jobs anymore. And I think Moot's getting fed up with Barrow being the idiot that he is. Like, he has
Yeah,
that sort of crystallization of like, wait a minute. Barrow doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He always talks about
Moot's
this, that, and the other thing.
yeah.
I mean, Moot is also a fucking moron.
He thinks that like with enough basement karate, he can kill Tar. Like,
Yeah.
are you out of your mind?
Yeah. He's a stone cold idiot. But he has, even the dumbest of us have flights of clarity where he's like, wait a minute, Barrow's the one holding me back.
Mm-hmm.
So then he poisons Barrow. Like
Yeah,
he
he like
poisons his
drugs
beer,
his beer. Yeah.
and then when he's all wobbly, he hits him with like a lethal dose of SN1, and then he takes all the Jade. And I was like, yeah, get yours, Moot. Fucking stick it to that dumb fuck.
Yeah, go live your best life.
And then he does.
Yeah, and Barrow crawls out of his apartment and collapses, and for all we know, he's dead. And I was like, oh, great. That was unexpected, but glad I don't have to deal with him anymore.
He's not dead. There's no way he's dead.
When you initially said that, I was like, ugh, like, I know that you're probably right about this, but I don't want you to be because then that means we have more Barrow chapters ahead of us.
He's
so
gonna
I was
be
like, no, he's dead for sure.
he'll be in the 3rd book. I'm holding to it that he's the final villain.
Well, knowing what I know about how the 3rd book is structured, I'm really curious to know, like, does this conflict end? Ever? Or does it just continue in, like, every subsequent generation?
Yeah.
Does Barrow discover the secret to immortality and ascend to godhood?
Like, if I was writing this series, Barrow would eventually be killed in a duel by Andon.
Ooh, that would be good. That would be very poetic.
The guy who killed Lon. The guy who takes credit for killing Lon. Versus the guy who refuses to get over the fact that he also killed Lon. Stupid. Anyway, the next chapter, based on my notes, I don't remember what's who it's about. Because my first note is there's like 3 different wars going on right now.
Yeah, there are. And this is the first, like, this batch of chapters is the first time that we're starting to get multiple character perspectives in the same chapter,
Mm.
which
Mm-hmm.
kind of began happening very unceremoniously. And I'm not mad about it. I think it adds like some interesting dynamics into the way that like scenarios are occurring.
It's a little
But it is just
confusing,
kind of a
but
weird change. Yeah. It's kind of like a Ken chapter though. Like they are in Ken finds a body in a shipping container and it's one of the rats for No Peak. And they're talking about how this is the first time Zapunyo
the Punyo.
has Zapunyo has like rubbed killing one of their rats in No Peak's face. So they're like, oh, he's getting really like cocky about the way that he's dealing with things. And Ken's kind of reflecting about feeling concern around the fact that Shay is going to be kind of looking after everything while Hilo goes to Espenia, because she is just like a suit basically who sits at a desk all day and really doesn't understand the level of like intricacy and the dynamics happening on the
Right.
streets that Hilo has the perspective of, because Ken is still kind of like heavily relying on Hilo's expertise and like I think counsel for like being the horn, even though he's really kind of come into his own and has his own way of running things. I think he's obviously still keeping Hilo in the know,
Right.
but so he's just like, I don't know how I feel about that over the next few weeks.
Yeah. And it's really weird that Ken, despite being like a generally a good dude, like he refuses to acknowledge anybody but Hilo a lot of the time. It's like, man, you're essentially like second in command. It's time to chill. Just be
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Yeah.
But also it is Shay, so I understand.
He's probably, I think they have their own kind of working relationship, but she just doesn't have the same level of insight. But Ken's basically like, Hilo, we need to figure out how to whisper Zapunyo's name. And Hilo's like,
Right.
well, I thought about it, but we have like so many enemies right now. We're fighting so many different wars. We kind of just have to deal with one thing at a time right now.
Yeah, they have a lot
And
of irons in the fire.
yeah, fully. There's this whole like section about how a few weeks ago the police had arrested a shine dealer that Shay had talked about. I think all of this is kind of the No Peaks pursuit and efforts to undermine Aitmata's like succession plan and to get
Right.
the Mountain Clan to like just fight amongst themselves for a while. So they're kind of shaken up and unstable
Yeah.
because they're like getting somebody else in one of the other like contender for the successions
Mm-hmm.
family killed, or they're like, go have this person killed. And I thought that was a great change of pace because No Peak doesn't usually, like, they have been so casual with
Yeah.
not
Super
murdering people.
super
Like,
reactionary.
yeah,
Which is not a good way to fight a war on multiple fronts. Good way to get rolled over. But
definitely.
after that conversation, it like switches perspectives over to Marrow, who's like going back to his office at the school.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
zoned out a lot of this chapter. But like a bunch of dudes are there waiting for him, and they're doing the like, all right, pal, you're gonna do what we say, see, and you're gonna like it, see. And one of my notes is What is a Shatarian supposed to be?
In terms of what?
Culture, like what the real world parallel.
I mean, oh, I don't know. All I know is that they're like Kakon's blood feud enemy for life.
It like it doesn't make sense, and it's partially because other than the Hispanians, um, the way people look aren't really described at all.
That's true. Like to this day, I still don't really know what Andon looks like.
I picture him as just like kind of a generic looking weasel shithead kid. Like he's still got his baby fat on him,
Right?
and he parts his hair like down the middle.
Yeah. um yeah, we don't get a ton of like physical descriptions of what characters look like.
Yeah. Like when later when they describe Moot as like Shay puts her fingers through his beard, I was like, he has a beard?
Yeah, that's news to me.
When did that happen?
I know. This scene though, where Marrow's in his office and the thugs show up, I was like, okay, this has got to be Soradio, and the whispered name contract happening that Barrow and Moot turned down.
Right.
Because they're like, okay, are you still fucking that call girl? Like, can you get us a meeting with the family or what?
Yeah, get us in there, bud.
And they're blackmailing him, saying that like if you don't do these things, I'm sure your colleagues would love to hear about all your trips over to like Laolo City, visiting your Shatarian family. And so Marrow starts panicking and sweating a lot, and he's like, what do you want from me? And they're like, we just want an introduction. You know the family personally. We want to set up a meeting. And Morrow like agrees basically, and they leave, and he like collapses in a heap in a chair and just like panics.
Yeah, and that's the end of that chapter.
Yeah.
And then it goes over to Moot again, who's like living his best life.
Yeah, he's just like out for drinks by himself.
He my first note is wishing Moot a very congratulations for murdering Barrow. And like everything's coming up Moot. Like man, I don't even remember what happens to him, but like he had a good stroke of luck there for a minute. Oh, it was he was at the bar drinking by himself, and these girls come up to him and are like, "Ooh, are you a real green bone?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Yeah, that it falls apart like immediately though, because he has no social skills or charisma. And then they start asking like specific questions. But Moot, when he's like sitting at this bar by himself, like he's got that so like the energy of like, isn't it hilarious that you can look like a normal human being at a coffee shop? Meanwhile, you're a multi 6/7 fig/month global CEO of a brand and do things every day that most people just don't even dream about in their lifetime. And then some girls come over and they're like, so like, are you a fist? Where do you like work out of? And he's like, like respect me.
Around.
You're supposed to not ask questions of green bones. You're supposed to just lavish attention and respect on them.
And then he makes the greatest mistake of all. They're like, "Ooh, where'd you get all that jade?" And he's like, "I killed Kalon." And they're like, and I was like, "Man, you watched Barrow, that dumb fuck, try that same shit like 4 different times, and every time he got laughed at. Why would you ever think it was gonna work for you?"
It's baffling.
But like it kind of does work because everybody gets really nervous, and then he's like, haha, I am kidding.
Right, yeah. But he does not pick up any girls.
He strikes out hard.
He should have had a black light at the bar and gone up to them and been like, oh, look, you've got lint all over you.
Whoa.
Better pick that up. Hey, you want me to read your runes for you? By the way, you've got man hands because
You'd
all
be
of those
hotter if you
tactics
had
would have
brown
worked.
hair.
Yeah. Do you like my top hat and crushed velvet blazer?
Anyway, thank God that chapter's over.
Yeah, the last important thing on that chapter is that the bartender overhears the whole conversation, and that once Moot leaves, he goes into the back of the kitchen and uses the employee phone to make a call
Right.
to a call, we presume.
That's, I mean, like, Moot and the amount of, like, sheer stupid that Barrow and Moot consistently engage in is staggering.
And are
They're
somehow
they're
still
still
alive.
waltzing around in KCON
Yeah.
when if any of the other clans find out who they are and what they've done, they will be torn to pieces, and there's nothing they can do because their little
That's
fight club is not going to help them.
yeah, that's one of the most infuriating things about this book in a way that like I mean the book does this very well where it's like they're such idiots but because they're so like anonymous and their lives are so not even registering on the
Yeah,
radar of the rest of the family like they manage to get away with so much because they're just pieces of shit.
yeah. They are alive, but for the grace of them being so far down the ladder that they are nobody.
Yeah.
Um, 39 is the next chapter.
Hmm.
And it starts with them talking about like a holiday in Port Massey question mark.
Yeah, it's like Harvest Eve and like
Yeah.
Corey's coming back and it's when Hilo's coming to visit.
And I was like, man, at this point, who gives a shit what time of year it is? You guys change the time whenever you feel like it.
How many years has it been since this book started? Like 3 at this point? Like who
It's
fucking knows anymore?
like it's been from the end of the first book, it has been 2 years, which is way too much time.
For so little to happen.
But like the absolute maddening part of it is that it didn't have to. You can just take the things that happen all of this time apart and push it together so that it happens within 6 months, 8 months, maybe a year. You can do that
Yeah.
because you're
Why do you
writing it
think he did that?
fondly. Just squoosh it, condense it, please.
I know. Like why do you think she did it like that?
I cannot imagine.
My best guess, like knowing the synopsis that I read or one of the reviews I read of Jade Legacy where it was like, oh, this book spans like several generations and has like a sweeping timeline. It's like maybe she was using this book as filler for this other book that just seems like a slice of life, whatever. But she wanted to have as many like babies born as possible so that they could all
Right.
be in the next book. Like
Establish the
that
legacy.
because Wen's getting pregnant like every 3 months at this point, and
Yeah.
like I
She's really
just
slamming them out.
yeah.
But this chapter also has a really, really bad habit of doing something that this book does a lot, which is explaining something to you that you've already had explained to you.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was specifically in this chapter, but I know I was like, man, you've told us this like 3 times already.
I think it maybe was the conversation that like Hilo and the like host family that ended staying with, or like the Pillars family, where they kind of reiterate a bunch of exposition so that Hilo can hear it.
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah, I think so. It was something like that. But essentially, I think this chapter is also the one where Hilo goes and has dinner with the Dauks
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because
And
they go straight from the airport, basically.
yeah,
Um,
and they chit chat a lot about again explaining everything that we've heard before. And then Hilo goes, "I want to meet these crews."
Right.
And Dauk is like, "Whoa, what do you mean? Why would you want to do
Yeah.
that?" And then they go for a walk. No. Yes? Go
No.
for a walk to get go to
They
the toy
go,
store. That's after.
I think that's or maybe no, yeah, that's after. I think that's after the next chapter. But
Yeah.
Andon and Hilo and Tar go out for some brandy at the hotel bar where Hilo's staying. But
Right.
something worth mentioning during like the dinner that they have, because Andon is like really scared to see Hilo because he hasn't seen him in 2 years. And Hilo and him, like the last conversation they had was Hilo basically being like, fuck
Bye.
off, I never want to hear or talk like hear
Mhm.
from or talk to you again ever. But it's like quickly revealed that Hilo is like too much of a softie to actually be mean to Andon in person anymore because it's been so long, which is like very on brand for Hilo. Like we'll give like sweeping ultimatums in a moment of being upset and then be like, of course I didn't mean that. Like, of
I was
course I want
just
to see you
mad.
again. Um, but he's like making these digs at Andon all night, being like, Andy wouldn't ask me here for no reason. Like, who can we trust if not our family?
Mhm.
But after dinner, because Corey and his parents are there, because that's who's they're having dinner with. They like the Kekanese have a tradition of like having a nice dinner and then they kind of clear the dishes away and then they reposition their chairs to kind of indicate position, like who's
Yeah.
who in the pecking order. And Andon is like shocked to see that Corey and um Dauk's wife are still like sitting at like the equal
Right.
chair positioning because everyone else is kind of back and angled in or something, like little separate thrones type deal.
Yeah.
Um, but Corey is like so checked out of this whole conversation
Yeah.
and is like falling asleep in his chair. And at one point gets up to go do the dishes and starts like clanging around in the kitchen. And Andon is so embarrassed and like so is Corey's dad. They're all
Super
like, oh
offended
my
about that.
God.
Like he's like,
Yeah.
who does he think he is just going and washing dishes when the big kids are talking business?
Yeah. And he's like trying to kind of like he's like, and like, when are we gonna see each other? And it's like, not. How dare you touch me right now, like in front of
Yeah.
our families?
This is very serious. Don't what the fuck do you mean do you want to go like suck each other's dicks? Get real.
Yeah,
It's very serious. But
yeah. But I think they just go to the bar and then they have like some
yeah,
brandy and they catch up and that's it.
they kind of have a catch up, but Andon is too scared to actually say anything, and he's just like, "I'll talk to you later, Andy."
Yeah, I think at the end of the chapter, like it's kind of implied that a conversation ensues, but who the fuck knows like how much
Yeah.
Andon actually reveals, considering he knows so little about himself or the place he's been
Oh God,
staying
no
for the
kidding.
last year. What could he possibly say?
Uh, this next chapter, chapter 40, is probably my favorite chapter of the whole book so far. This shit
Mm-hmm.
ruled. Um, Hilo and Dauk go meet with essentially the various Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, Joe Boy, Anga, Sharp Ricky, Skinny Reams.
So outrageous. Also, uh, count yourself lucky you are reading it.
Oh, what kind of accents happened?
There's some straight up Dick Van Dyke level Cockney accents.
No.
It's really bad.
Oh
Uh,
boy.
I thought it was pretty funny that the Hispanian gangs are dressed up like mafia. They're like
Mm-hmm.
they've got their long black trench coats, and it's like, man, what a bunch of fucking nerds.
Yeah.
But essentially, all of the gangs are like, "Hey, why not give us Jade, and we'll leave your little Greenbone clan alone?" And Hilo's like, "Okay, how much do you want?" And the Dauk is like, "What do you mean?" And he essentially sells them an absolute fuck ton of Jade for like almost 1 billion, whatever the dumb currency is in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And Dauk is flying, like his head is spinning off his shoulders because he cannot believe that he would just like so gleefully just sell all of this Jade to a bunch of criminals. And I think this is when they're having a little walk afterwards.
Yeah.
That Hilo's like, "You think I'd give them like real shit? We've got so much stolen trash that they won't know the difference. I'll just give them that and we'll be 900 million whatever's richer."
Yeah, because they've been stockpiling all this scrap jade that like Zapunio and his clan have been to smuggle.
Yeah. And Dauk is like, "Oh wow. I never would have thought of that. You really are as cool as everyone says." And Hilo does like a
Yeah.
fucking cool anime pose and shit. He's like, "Yeah, you're right. Now help me pick out some toys for my kids."
Yeah. He also offers to sell real good quality jade to Dauk and the other
That's right.
Port Massey Greenbones, and then bring people over more often and have people train the Greenbones there,
He wants a
like how to
foothold.
use it. Totally.
A foothold in
But
Espenia.
Dauk doesn't agree to it straight away. He's like, I need to think about this for a while. And Hilo's like, I would have judged you if you didn't respond that way.
Yeah. He's like, would have been really shitty if you just said yes right away. But this next chapter just ripped me right out of the glee I felt from this dope ass chapter.
Yep.
Because Andon and Hilo have breakfast, and Andon still doesn't fucking get it.
Yeah, he's like, so I'm almost done school. I assume I'll be returning to Janloon after that.
Yeah, and Hilo's like, "Pump the brakes. Where did you ever hear that? Whoever told you you were gonna come back after 2 years?" And he's like, but. And they get into a big fight about it. And it's so outrageous that Andon is like screaming at Hilo, and Hilo's just like, "How about you do what I say, or fucking else, bud?"
Yeah, like Hilo's being perfectly reasonable about the whole thing. He's like, tell me you'll put on Jade and I'll book you an airplane ticket immediately. And then Andon is like, oh, like, of course this is coming up. Like, yeah.
Would have clocked him. I would have backhanded him.
Yeah. Hilo's like, listen, man, if you come back to Janloon and you don't wear Jade, you're always going to be seen as the least of the calls, the one who was ruined by Jade. You'll be treated the way a recovered alcoholic or a felon is treated. And then Andon has the fucking audacity to be like, are you really concerned about me or is it the family's reputation? Hilo's like, shut the fuck up. My wife is a stone eye. The Make brothers were like seen as a disgrace to Kekanese society, and they're like my horn and pillar man and brothers now. Like, how fucking dare you come to me with this shit?
It's so juicy. And then
Yeah.
Andon storms off and immediately like calls Corey, and he's like, "I need to fuck."
Oh
And
god,
I was
I
like,
dramatically
"Ah!"
blocked that out. I was like,
And I was like, this only further cements this whole Oedipus complex going on here. He got yelled
yeah.
at by his dad, and then he's got to go fuck his dad. Fucking disgusting. Anyway, chapter
it's
42.
like an Electra complex with Andon.
Yeah.
it's very cringe. And yeah. Anyways, chapter 42.
Uh, my for a while, my only note in this whole chapter was I zoned out. I don't remember what happened. But then, it essentially, like, I wrote down, oh, Marrow's being a bitch about, but it's essentially Shay and Marrow go out for like dinner or drinks or something, and then they talk awkwardly, and then they go back to their apartment, and she tries to like have sex with him, and he's like, no, wait, are you sure? And she's like, yep. So then they get to it, and then she nuclear, but like tactical missile strike. I got an abortion.
Yeah. It's Wound's wedding. Because Shay's mad at Hilo. They're like arguing about some shit. But basically, like, there's a conversation that happens, and Shay's thinking about Wound's upcoming wedding, and she's like, he hasn't asked to resign in the last year, probably because he's happier, but I still have my reservations, because she can't fathom the idea that he would actually properly move on from her, and this
Yeah.
isn't just a marriage of him trying to get over her. But Marrow comes with Shay to Wound's wedding as her guest, and Shay gets very wine drunk, and then her and Marrow go back to Shay's place afterwards, and Marrow says some shit where he's like, hold on, I gotta read like what he said here, because it very much like echoes what you said last time about Marrow being like, oh, things will be different once we get married type deal, where it's like Marrow had on more than one occasion implied that they could get over this difficult stretch if they were both willing to trust again. No.
Ooh, red flag.
No. And then they're kind of just like having, oh yeah, no, Marrow also says, I think I understand better why you shut me out before. I've accepted the fact that you were under a lot of pressure at the time and wanted to keep me from being targeted, but I'm not sure I can do this anymore. Be your friend. Which is fair. And he is kind of hinting at the fact that it's hard to kind of be a friend but not have any protection from the clan, and that will become important later. But
Yeah.
he goes, I need to know where I stand with you. Can you just tell me once and for all, is there any chance for us? And Shay kisses him and then is like, I had an abortion.
Yeah.
And she's like, now you know everything. He says nothing, gets up and leaves.
Cruise missiled his ass.
Yeah.
Well, he goes full blown bitch about it. Like, he's like, why didn't you ever tell me? This is outrageous. It's like, fuck you, dude. You don't have the right.
Yeah, they were broken up. Or no, they weren't broken up yet. But I think she kind of they were kind of almost broken up. Like, they hadn't seen each other in a long ass time. And she was about to go fight Ite, basically.
Yeah.
But I think this was really the only way, because she probably knew that by saying that he would bitch out and be like, okay, bye forever. But otherwise he would probably be that, just like a hanger on for a long time.
Forever,
like,
yeah.
Maybe, if you just change this one fundamental thing about you, maybe it would work. You just let me in and promise like you'll never get into a fight again. Promise me.
Stay home. You won't ever have to work.
Yeah.
We'll take care of you.
That's kind of almost like the vibe that I thought I was getting from like how Hilo used to speak to Wen before they got married.
Oh. Wen and Hilo have turned out to be like Lord Commander couple. Like, they are
totally
the best.
Yeah, I really love seeing like how their relationship has evolved and how Wen specifically has evolved. Because at first I was like, oh, is he just trying to like placate her? Because we didn't know Hilo that well, like when this conversation was happening in the first book of being like, you'll just, do interior design, blah, blah, blah. But he was genuinely like, pick a career branch. Like, I will help you. I will give you all the resources you need to succeed here. Like, anything you need, I will support you.
What the next chapter is Moot's comeuppance. Does he die?
Not during the events of the chapter.
Okay.
They just say he's buried alive, but they
Right.
leave a breathing tube for him.
Right. Because that's where I
But
got confused.
okay. Yeah, so it's Hilo and Ken, I think, maybe. They have captured Moot, that he's in a kind of coffin. They think that he's the only one responsible
Right.
for stealing Lon's jade, but because he's wearing all of it. And Moot is trying to be like, no, 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 there was another guy. He made the whole plan. I just went along with it. And he was like, shut the fuck up. He takes Jade out of his chest, shoves it down Moot's throat, and then buries him with that jade and takes all of Lon's jade.
Fucking
And
ruthless. I love it.
yeah, so they want him to like go into shine withdrawal and get the itches and die essentially that way.
Yep.
But we don't hear that he's dead. But then
only
they kind of
assume-
talk about it later, but like we don't know for sure. Like
Yeah.
I've learned my lesson in assuming that people are dead. We can't be sure. I mean, how long could he actually survive like without food or water? And also being like
without water is 3 days.
Okay. And I think quite a bit of
It's like 2 weeks without
I don't know.
food.
It could be a day. It could be 4 years. I have no idea how the passage of time works in this book anymore.
True. But then, I think like Mate Ken goes home and he has some of Lon's jade and he goes, "Hey Nico, check it out. It's your dead dad's stuff."
Yeah.
And then the next chapter was really confusing to me.
I just didn't care about it.
Because it's like Skinny Reams is unloading something. There's something happening.
They're waiting for a jade shipment
Right.
at the docks.
Yeah. And then something happens where he gets jumped and like concrete shooed.
Yeah, I think another crew comes up and they're like, "Oh my god, like thank God you're okay. We heard you were about to be ambushed." And Skinny Reams is like, "No, everything's fine. We got the jade." And then the other guy is like, "All of the jade?" And it's like the way he says that, where Skinny Reams knows he's being betrayed actively in that moment. And like that crew like pulls out a bunch of guns and starts shooting. Skinny Reams jumps into the water and he starts swimming away. And he's like, "There's no fucking way that this crew would act like this without like Blaze Cromner's explicit permission to do so." Because I think Cromner in the boss's like summit meeting was like, "Great, like now all I have to do is figure out how to kill off all these other crews and get all the jade and money for myself." So I think this was maybe like the first part of that plan.
Yeah. Which is why my one and only note for this whole chapter was, "Oh, bye Skinny Reams, I didn't know you."
Yeah, I don't care about him.
And then the next chapter is starts off with a bang.
Well, it starts off with a picnic and ends with a bang.
I believe it's Wen is having a little picnic.
Yeah, she's mad Hilo can't join them, but he got pulled into some business. He has a meeting with some people that he's meeting for the very first time. So
These connections never even occurred to me.
She takes her like 51 children to the park.
Yeah.
For picnic times. And like bless her heart, nobody works harder in this book than Wen. Like we hear a little bit of like her daily routines where it's like every spare second of the day is like spent in devotion to furthering No Peak's purpose
Yeah.
and like supporting Hilo any way she can.
It's a thankless job.
Totally.
Uh, but like after their picnic, the car pulls up and she's like, "Okay, kids, come on, it's time to go." And then the car just explodes. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh shit." And the book wanted us to know for sure that Mate Ken in that car was dead because it said that she couldn't see him, but she knew.
She knew in that moment her brother was dead. It's like, okay.
All right.
Because she thinks Hilo is picking her up because it's Hilo's car,
Mm-hmm.
but Hilo just sent Ken to go pick them up. And she's like, oh my God, like a few minutes later, if that bomb had gone off, it would have killed me and all my children. She runs into a lantern man's business and is like, and for whatever reason, they're like really hesitant about wanting to help her. She's like, can you just put me and my kids in a room for a bit?
Typical
Like, call my
fucking
husband.
lantern men, dude.
And they're like, oh, well, I mean, I guess like my day's pretty full. And it's like, meanwhile, there's like sirens and like a smoking car in the parking lot. And they're like, oh.
Every instance we have in these books interacted with lantern men outside of them explaining that they were supposed, like, the lantern men were a safe haven for clan members to go during hard times, and every instance of lantern men being interacted with, they are cowards, greedy, sniveling little weasels.
Yes, the worst.
Every single one of them. I don't know why they put up with it. And they have, like,
Truly.
so many of them have the audacity to be, like, storming into the Pillar's office and demanding shit. And it's like, who do you think you are?
Yeah,
Do
sorry,
you know who I
are
am?
you? Mm-hmm.
But anyway, enough about that. Ken's dead. And
Yeah.
everybody's very upset.
Well, because Ken's like the goodest boy. And
Yeah,
he's
he was
just
alright. He just got
recently
married.
married. His wife was expecting.
Too bad.
It's really sad. But that's another baby that we need to have, I think, for the next book. So that's probably another reason. Because, like, babies and pregnancy is such a, like, common theme and
very important
occurrence
theme in this book.
Throughout this whole book. And it's like, some people are having them, other people are not. But mostly people are having them, and lots of them.
Would have called this book Jade Baby. Hey! Got him. But I think the next chapter is Shay freaking out. Because now she's effectively the Horn.
No, she's not. There's another person who is.
Well, she's like the interim.
I don't even think she is. I think it's this other dude, like Juin or something.
There was a kerfuffle about her being like the most in command. Like, she is effectively the highest in command at the moment.
In what it like exchange?
Well, she knew the guy who she was going to like essentially be like, okay, now you are the Horn. But I feel like there was some kerfuffle about, she's like, oh my gosh, I'm like the most important person in the clan right now.
I mean, that would track for Shay.
And,
I just remember there being like a complicated power dynamic between her and the guy that's that's serving as like interim Horn in what she has to do in the chapter.
Right. Because somebody is at the gate and they're like, this guy just turned himself in. He said he did it. And they all run outside and Marrow's the one who's done it.
Yep.
And it's a whole lot of very sad conversation where he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. They blackmailed me.
You chose your clan. I had to choose mine.
So stupid. And then Shay is like, he cannot live.
Well, because she knows that when Tar and Hilo, who are like, I think Hilo's in the process of telling Tar what had happened to Ken in the house. The minute Tar gets his hands on Marrow, he's gonna have
he'll
the
live for the next
worst
15
time.
years.
Yeah, until he dies in agony. So Shay's like, I gotta. She snaps his neck basically.
She
before
channels his head dead.
Right. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So bye, Marrow.
Yeah.
Too bad.
But the people who did Shay realizes that the people that Hilo was having the meeting with today were the people who planted or allowed Marrow to plant the car bomb, basically.
Right.
So, and is this where we get the name? Yeah. Marrow's like, the leader was half Shatarian and wore Jade. I heard the others call him Sordillo. So we get confirmation that this was
Zacunio.
the whispered name was Hilo's name, and Barrow and Moot would have been the people working on this if they had agreed to do it.
Yeah. But in the next chapter, Shay, in true Shay fashion, the only character who hasn't changed at all, makes it all about her.
Where it's like she had a cordial working relationship with Ken, but she locks herself in her room for a fucking week. But it's not because of even Ken. She's like, I had to kill my ex-boyfriend who I didn't even like that much. When, meanwhile, it's like her brother, and she's like, I've been here every day. I can't stop supporting because I got kids, which sometimes I kind of fucking hate when people are like really self-righteous about how important their lives are because they have kids.
You don't like to do work? Well, I do work and have kids. It's like, all right.
They're the same type of people who are like, you don't understand what love is unless you've experienced love for your own child. It's like, fuck you. Wen gives me that energy sometimes. That's the only thing I don't like about her.
But like Wen essentially kicks down Shay's door and is like, what the you have to do your job. And she's like, but I can't, I'm so sad. And she's like, I don't give a fuck, dude. You're the weatherman. So buck up, Buttercup, and get your fucking ass out there and start acting like the weatherman.
Yeah, she's like, when your brother died, you didn't take any time off. Like, what the fuck's going on here? When your precious granda died, you didn't take any time off. Like, I mean, sure, like getting time off to grieve should be a thing, but not in a crime syndicate family.
No. You guys are criminals.
You don't get any PTO in this family.
Thank God that Wen has some goddamn common sense, because Shay was like, you're right. I am important.
The most important, right?
That's not what I said, but okay.
Yeah, it's I shouldn't, they can't function without me. Yeah, you're so right. I'll come back.
And it's essentially just like Shay's like, you're right. I am gonna go out there and do my job. The most important job.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the chapter, thankfully. And then the last chapter that we read this fortnight is the reveal that Barrow didn't die.
How did he live? He received a triple dose of shine.
Somebody called an ambulance for him.
Right, his neighbor.
His apartment neighbor saw him and debated whether or not to call the cops.
Oh yeah, that's right. She shouldn't have done it.
And then he got better, I guess. And then he went to a casino and got crazy drunk. And he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna win all this money, and then I'm gonna kill myself."
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it's a dope plan, bro.
Cool plan for the evening.
And then I forget his name, but he's the guy that lost both of his arms.
Yeah, the dude with the monkey. Iton?
Yeah. Ugantan? No.
I think it's Eiten.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Let's find out. Um,
But like, it's
it,
essentially his place he's at.
they're at the Double Double Casino
Right.
and the Hoji Distillery. What do they
Yeah.
call it? It has a kind of cool name, the Hoji Distillery, and I can't remember what they've called it, but it's operating out of like the Double Double,
Right.
and it's huge. But he's kind of like the unofficial lookout for people who are planning on unaliving themselves in the
Yeah.
casino person, as someone who formerly begged for death.
And he
I guess.
he gives Barrow the like come to Jesus meeting where he's like, "Hey man, I lost my arms in a fight and I begged for death, and you know what? It wasn't given to me, and my life is better now. So
Yeah, now
get over it." And Barrow's like, "Whatever, man."
he's like, "You have a monkey? That's kind of weird." Like,
And
that's pretty
then
much all he's focusing on.
yeah, and then this guy calls up No Peak and he's like, "I've got a little something you might like. I just met some dumbass." And that's the end.
Does he's well, yeah, that's right.
It was a really short chapter.
Oh, he calls Lot. That's right.
Loat.
Right, Lot. I don't know how anything is pronounced.
There's a lot of stuff that looks like it's pronounced one way but is not.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Like that's the good news is that we only have to read 16 more chapters of this fucking book.
Can I make it through though? Like,
Yeah, it'll be easy. The longest one is like what? 30 minutes maybe?
something cool better fucking happen.
It won't.
Kill off a main character.
They
Make it
won't.
exciting.
They already did. They already killed Make Ken.
If anyone else had to die, who do you think it would be?
Nobody left. Everybody is like essential.
Yeah, that's true.
Like if you killed Hilo, everything would crumble.
I don't think Hilo will die,
If you killed Shay, everything would kind of fall apart.
but I would be happier. Honestly, though, she's less insufferable in this book because it's not about her like come to Jesus moment. She's just
Mhm.
like kind of having offhanded inner monologues about like how important she is and
Yeah.
like how every experience that she's experienced is very unique to just her and no one else. And like I can handle that. Like she's kind of taken a back seat. Now I would love if Andon got killed off. I would be fine with that at this point. I
No,
don't
he's
think
gotta
that's
be-
what's gonna happen.
No, he's got to be important in the Jade Legacy.
Do you think they'd ever kill off Wen? Because that's the only person I would. Her and Hilo are the two people that I would be super upset.
That would be
over.
risky
Mm-hmm.
because it would send Hilo into a self-destructive fury, and then everything would crumble.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what ends up happening, if anything, between No Peak and the Mountain Clan because nothing has
God,
like
nothing has
since
happened.
since Shay's fight with Aitmata, like they've just been kind of dealing with their succession plan.
Even though it's very weird, even though Shay lost, they make it seem like Aitmata got beat.
Yeah,
Like she just kind of went off with her tail between her legs, and it's like, but she won. What do you mean?
I know.
Like Shay losing was the best case scenario or the best outcome. It's very dumb. It's like she flipped a coin and then went, "Oh, that's not what I wanted, so I'll just like kind of weave the story back to where I wanted it."
Yeah, all that happened really from that fight was that Shay kind of cleared her name a bit, but they didn't like gain any positive footing. Like
No.
I actually it turned it into like a PR campaign for Ait because she didn't prove that she was like the cold-blooded murderer that everybody kind of gossips about her being.
Right.
So like it really probably helped Ait's image more than Shay's, but
They don't say that.
No, that's one of the things that frustrates me about this book a lot, where it's like we have to infer so much for this book to have meaning,
A lot of details
and
get lost in the weeds.
we shouldn't have to work so hard to make things make sense
Yeah.
or to make things mean something beyond just what they're doing.
Yeah. But one more episode, boys and girls, and then we're done. And then we're doing a little wrap up of all the books we read on our own.
That should be nice.
It'll be fun.
Well, it'll be therapeutic for me.
Well. All right, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the end of this goddamn book. Bye, everybody.
Farewell.
Thanks for watching.